All right, so yesterday we went from standard notation and took all of our numbers into scientific notation. And we have a new vocab word. Well, it might not be new, but standard notation. That's just the actual number. Okay, and what I mean by that, I put it in quotes because it's kind of a weird definition, but the actual number would be like 87 or 2 million, right? That's like the actual number. It's not in scientific notation, it's just in regular standard form. Okay, so standard notation is just the actual number, so what something actually is. Okay, not in any notation or any form. It's just regular numbers. The steps to going through from scientific notation and then backwards to standard notation. Okay, we first want to write the number without the times 10. Okay, so that's going to be our first step, is just whatever number we have. Let's say, for example, we have 8.23 times 10 to the third power. Okay, so our first step would just be write 8.23 without that times 10. The second step, we're going to move the decimal to the left or right. Okay, depending on if we have a positive exponent or a negative exponent. And we're going to move it the number of spaces the exponent tells us. Okay, so for example, in this little example I'm doing on the side, our exponent is 3 and it's a positive. Now, since it's positive, I'm going to move my decimal to the right because I know it's a big number. Okay, so I'm going to move my decimal 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I moved it to the right because I know a positive means it's going to be big. Okay, and then we need to fill in the zeros. Okay, so our third step is fill in the extra spaces with zeros. Okay, so notice here that I have this extra space here, so I'm going to fill this in with a 0. So my final answer ends up being 8,230. Okay, so not too bad. It's just going backwards. Okay, going from scientific notation back to our standard notation. Make sure you're pausing the video and writing down all these notes. You don't have to write down my example here on the side, but if that's helpful for you, I think it would be a good idea too. I'm going to go through the first couple just so we kind of get the hang of some things, and then you can move on to the rest of the worksheet. Alright, so we have 0.9 times 10 to the negative 1 power. And in this example, I see that I have a negative 1, so I know my number is going to be small. Okay, and that means I'm going to move it to the left. Okay, so I'm just going to rewrite my 0.9 number, and then I'm going to move it one space to the left. Okay, so now I have 0.09, and this would be my final answer. Number 18, 2 times 10 to the negative first power. I'm just going to rewrite my number 2. Okay, and remember, if there's not a decimal there, we need to just put it in. Okay, so we just throw it at the end. And then again, this is a negative 1, so that means I'm going to go to the left because it's going to be smaller, one space. So I end up with 0.2. And in both of these examples, I didn't have to fill in my spaces with zeros. For number 19, this time I have a positive, so I know I'm going to go to the right because it's going to be a big number. And this doesn't have a decimal, so I'm going to add the decimal to the end. I'm going to move my decimal 5 spaces. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then I just fill in. Okay, and so now I end up with 20,000 for my final answer. Number 20, we have 804 times 10 to the second power. Okay, I see it's a positive, so it's going to be it's going to get bigger, so I'm going to go to the right. Okay, and 804 doesn't have a decimal, so I'm just going to throw it at the end. I'm going to move my decimal 2 spaces, 1, 2. So now I have 804, and I can fill in those extra zeros. So I get 8,400 for my final answer. All right, if you have any questions, make sure you ask, okay, but fill out the rest of the worksheet by yourself.